Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Bulletproof Dental Practice Podcast. It's Pete and Craig flying in solo. Well, I guess not solo, but together.
I was like
Together.
listening to you say that. We're flying solo together. I like that. That's great.
We were just commenting on the Zoom how now when you hit record, it tells you recording in progress. And we think it's because too many people have been busted in this COVID environment doing creepy stuff on being recorded. And that one guy who got caught, what do they say, Craig? How do they say it politely?
I don't know how to say it politely. I guess pleasing himself.
Jerking his ding dong.
That is not how they say it.
Well, that's how we would say it in my house.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, our kids are so young. I don't think we have to worry about any ding dong conversations just yet.
Well, today we are going to be recording with the one and the only, the famous Peter Mallouk, head of creative planning. When he speaks, you better listen about the economic climate. But Craig and I had some time before that, and I wanted to get on something that is kind of in the same vein of that, and it's something I talk about to him a lot. Is debt and the environment, the inflationary environment, but it's really not that. It's really how to get out of debt and how to get out of debt efficiently as possible. And so we ascribe to two different methodologies, I think. But I was going to do a kind of a informational YouTube on this and then post it as a podcast. But Lacey, our director, said, look, it's really hard to do by yourself without, from an audio standpoint, but I think it'll be better with the banter of you and I.
Well, we're also very different on debt. We always talk about this. We have very different constructs about it and the way we view it. So this is a natural conversation that you and I always have. But the slide presentation looks pretty damn cool. I like the color.
It was pretty orange. Orange is a good color. Just makes you happy.
It makes me happy looking at it.
It's funny when I met you. I remember me being like I was very, very debt averse with everything, and you kind of have gotten in my kitchen a little bit about like, look, not all debt is bad. It was just kind of the way I was raised, and like obviously I didn't pay off mortgages and stuff but you kind of opened my eyes to the fact that look, debt is a form of leverage, and leverage, you can move the world. And Naval talks about that a lot, like having forms of good debt that you can, where there's arbitrage and situations like that, you can actually do really well. So not all that is bad. I also
think too, Peter, I think it's a conversation about timing. So we start off in our careers and our life with a certain set of rules. Okay, let me get to this first level. And what happens is we'll get to the second, third, fourth, and 10th level, and we'll never change the rules. There's different rules for different times of your life. So I think it's just important. I think what wound up happening to you is you had someone in your ear when you were 21 years old, and then you never changed the 21-year-old financial psychology and rules that you're playing by. And now you're a grown-ass man of 40 something, and your metrics and your numbers are different. So I think it's important to just always reevaluate
in the life cycle of where you are.
Right.
Yes. Right. Yeah. So look, there's a couple ways, and I think that we're going to go. I think we dig into this, but there's three real ways of methodologies of debt repayment as I dug into this, because I know the one that I kind of used and it helped me kind of just having a formula. But obviously, as I dug in, I found that there's kind of some other methodologies as well, and people feel equally as strong about that. So the first one is called the Debt Snowball, and this is the one that I think that Dave Ramsey deploys.
Yeah.
Right. So it with the Debt Snowball is that it ignores interest percent, but it just takes whatever your smallest debt is. You just say, well, I don't care what the interest rate is. I'm just going to pay that one down. And so his is a momentum thing, right? Because you feel victorious when you pay off the $10,000 credit card. And then what he's saying is then you take those funds and you deploy it to the next baddest actor in the group. So it gives you this momentum, and you start feeling like you see progress. From a math side, I don't love that one.
Well, it's not meant to be a math equation. It's meant to be.
I know.
It's a psychology thing. So half of the statins that are prescribed by doctors, Peter, half the pills that are prescribed by doctors are just because the average person won't make the diet or exercise changes necessary to improve their health. So that's why they get a pill. Right. So that's what this is. This is an easy pill to swallow because it shows human psychology. Most people have such an adverse psychology around money that just getting a small win is inertia in the right direction. So this is a behavioral approach, not a scientific or financial approach. It's a behavioral approach.
Did you ever use this method?
Never.
Okay.
No, but I listen to Dave Ramsey on YouTube, and I don't
like him.
Well, I
don't like his teachings.
Well, he's very opinionated, and he's kind of like one size fits all. And I think he's speaking to a different type of audience. So when you have a caller come in, and I've heard doctors come in, they say like, I have blank dollars of net worth. They're like, whoa. He's like, whoa, my God, incredible. Like, he has got that whole program.
Right.
So I think he's speaking to like more of the average, maybe person.
Common America. Yeah.
Common America.
Yeah. And the fact that he hates crypto, and that makes me hate him. So,
well, he hates all debt. So he's all about paying off your home mortgage too. And I have a lot of wealthy friends that are not putting more money into their houses right now.
No, that's another, maybe we'll save that for the end.
But he does not like the home mortgage, correct?
I just don't think, I think you're right. I think he just doesn't like debt at any form, turn, or whatever. And he wants you to like, it's like The Millionaire Next Door. It's that book, that horrible book. It's like, oh, just, like live your life in half mode and cut your toilet paper in half and like never drink a Starbucks. And like, that's not living. That's the worst book. Everyone that was so popular, like The Millionaire Next Door, like be miserable, be rich by being miserable, like horrible methodology.
Well, I mean, you can be wealthy and be miserable by spending everything you have. Like what Scott Galloway says, he has people in his world that make $2 million a year in between their, 2 ex-wives and their house in Aspen. They have money pressure. So I guess the goal is really to figure out a life where you have the things that you want, but you not torturing yourself by lying up at night, worry that you can't make.
Well, I think this is an important conversation, Greg, because no one really had these conversations with me, and like you said, to the 21-year-old Pete. And like, so I know there's a lot of people listening that probably have school loans and either from undergraduate dental school, and like kind of figuring, and then now they've got mortgage, now they've got car payments, now they've got consumer debt, now they've got practice debt, and like which one to do. And that's probably a longer conversation, but I thought it was just important to just throw some education around different actions, different schools of thought of debt, so that you can see which one's going to work for you. Because they all work, right? Meaning they would all work in theory. It's just which one do you that resonates. So the next one is called the Debt Avalanche. And I think I've done this one more. I actually did this one more from my student loan kind of aspect, but it's where you pay off the highest interest rate first, thereby lowering your rate. And obviously what that means, Craig, but the effective rate gets lessened by the principal amount getting decreased, right?
Right.
So it's the best option. If you look from I actually dug into this one a little bit.
Yeah, that's the one I've described to as well.
It's the best one from a mathematical. It makes the most sense to do because you're reducing the principal, and the one that is the biggest offender, meaning the highest interest rate. So you're mitigating the effect of that interest rate by reducing the principal. That, unfortunately, I think you lose a lot of motivation by doing that, because it's sometimes it's your biggest debt, and so sometimes it's like shooting a elephant with a BB gun. You're like, it's not doing anything. This debt isn't, this is not doing anything to this debt. This is what I'm throwing out. This $5,000 extra every year, whatever.
One thing to be aware of, back up a slide, and this is for business debts. I was not aware of this, Peter, but when you pay off those debts, that comes through as a distribution from your company. Those are taxable events, by the way. So let's just say you have a $30,000 loan on your SARAC or something like that. It's at 7%. You're like, oh, that's pretty high. If you have this extra 30,000 lying around and you wind up slicking that debt, you're going to owe the taxes on the 30,000. You owe ordinary income tax.
It's ordinary income. It's business income.
Right. But still, it increases your adjusted gross income. Sure. Something that maybe a lot of people, I would bet that at least half the people listening to this didn't know that. And that's really important.
Yeah. It was designed That's designed. That's not a bug. That's a feature of the way they designed the system.
Yeah. Yeah.
They want you to buy.
And by the way, the interest on your debt is tax deductible when it's for a business expense.
Of course. So in the context of a business vehicle,
so,
right?
Yeah. So let's back up again, because we're going right into tactics with different ways to pay off debt. So let's just say you were very proud. You'd always say to me like, oh yeah, I did it for cash. I did this for cash. So right now we're in an interest rate environment as of this recording. We're probably like 3.5%. Would you say, Pete? Maybe a little lower?
I don't know. I actually looked at my credit line just looking at that, and they're doing it at 2.5% right now. Okay, so I think it's prime +1.
Okay, so let's just say for normal people, let's call it 3.5, right?
Okay.
And let's say the adjusted your income tax is going to be what this year? What do you think? 38% for most of us? Soon to be 40, maybe?
Yeah, I don't know.
Let's just call it 40 for 2022. Let's just say that the legislation that's being talked about goes forward. Mm-hmm. So really, your effective interest rate is 3.5%. And then you're going to save 40% of that on your taxes. So it's times 0.6. So you're borrowing money if it's 3.5%, you're borrowing money at 2.1. And let's just throw a little inflation in there. Let's just say that the government's inflation rules of like that's only 2 and 3%, which you and I know is total bullshit. Let's just say it's really 10%, which is like if you look at the Chapworth index and your gas and Starbucks and all that shit or lumber, let's just say it is 10%. That means if your money is losing 10% or 5%, and you're borrowing at 2.1%, like why pay that one off?
Well, and that's Craig, you're hitting something,
and that's what I was always hitting on you when we first talked. You're like,
totally.
I built that for cash. I'm like,
but that was before look, we were having those conversations though, when the dollar was strong, and
so it made sense then though. And it makes more sense now.
I agree with you. I agree with you. As long as you don't look, as long as someone listening to us, and this is not financial advice, just make sure we make that disclaimer.
Yeah, we are definitely not financial advisors. We're just two guys talking about what we do.
But now I totally agree with you. As long as you're not over levered in your debt, meaning when I say over levered, as long as you have 6 months of whatever that payment is, and you decide not to pay that, you have 6 months of reserve for whatever that is, for each building you own, for each whatever you have, for each your house, you have 6 months reserves for all of it. So if it goes to squat, you're not all of a sudden over levered, and you get in the scenario of 2008 where it's now a shit show and you're going to lose things to the bank. So I just I like leverage, but I want to make sure people don't get over levered.
Well, yeah, there's 3 currencies I always talk about: emotion, time, and money, Pete. So you can lever up with money, and then you'll pay with emotion and time. You'll have no sleep, and you'll be miserable. So don't put yourself. And by the way, we're talking. But
it is one of the greatest tools though for creating wealth.
Unbelievable. Yeah, leverage. Unbelievable. However, you and I made an agreement when we first started this conversation. I want to make sure that we're talking openly. You and I talk about business investments. We are not talking about Ferraris. So just for the listener that knows, Peter and I,
you made that disclaimer.
Right. So Peter and I, if I called Peter, like put it this way, I wanted to buy like an RV trailer back before COVID. It was like, what was it, 18 grand or something?
It was,
Peter?
It was out the door, 21,000.
Yeah. And you would think I was buying like
a small country. You deliberated on that for 6 months.
Like, should I buy Luxembourg? Should I take Luxembourg down? It was literally like, shut the fuck up and buy it. I'll send you the money.
It was I literally was just going to buy it for you. I was so tired of hearing about it.
So that's important. Peter and I we're not big luxury purchase people. We're not doing things like that.
Look at this sweet Apple Watch. What are you talking about?
Look at this Garmin, bro. I went up to. They only made 17 million of these. Anyway, so it's important to talk about that, because dentists, I think, find themselves in a trap, and it's the trap that each year we make a little bit more money and we spend a little bit more. And we're going to deep dive in that with Peter Maluk this afternoon as well. But we're not talking about buying a boat. You got to recognize what's an appreciating versus a depreciating asset. And like, if you're going to do something, you might just be parking your money, and it might just be a hedge against inflation, meaning your dollars will be preserved if the dollars turn into the melting ice cubes that Peter always talks about. Mm-hmm. So debt and
Peter Boulden talks about, not Peter Maluk.
Peter Maluk.
Let's make sure we clarify which genius Peter you're talking about.
Okay, so yeah, the Debt Avalanche, paying them down.
All right, Debt Avalanche. There you go. So this is the one that I got a long time ago from my friend Garrett Gunderson. I know you've had conversations with him, and this is when And I know they do it because it's a whole life, and that's a vehicle. We're not going to go there, but I really liked this cash flow index that he kind of exposed me to, and I didn't use it, Greg, to buy more insurance or anything like that.
That was his spirit of the why he did that.
Well, maybe he's an awesome dude. Anyway, the cash flow index was really cool, but it also ignores the interest rate, not dissimilar to the debt snowball. But so it looks at, and this is where you hear the expression like cash is king, cash is king. I always remember hearing that. I was like, I think personally that cash flow is king. So this one is something that optimizes your cash flow, right? And so what you do is you pay off the debt that is the most inefficient. And how do you get, like, quote unquote, is there efficient debt, inefficient debt? Apparently there is in this zone. And you can Google this. It's a cash flow index, and you can get this numerator, or I guess this ratio and it'll show you if you do the math. And essentially how you do it is to get your cash flow index, you take your balance divided by your minimum payment, and that gives you a number. So if that number is super low, it means the debt is ultra inefficient. If it's high, very efficient, over 100, typically your mortgage or things where you've got like a 2.5%, Craig, like your mortgage is, high balance and low payment because it's amortized over 30 years. It's a very efficient debt. Okay. So I like this because
it's also efficient too, because in theory, the house could appreciate. So that's the other.
And it's also the hedge against what we just said, right? Who knows what's going to happen to the dollar in 30 years?
By the way, you know what I just did with my house, right, Peter? I just did a refi. I did interest a refi, only? But interest only. So a lot of my really, really smart, very wealthy friends are like, well, why are you paying? And by the way, 3 years ago, I was putting more principal into my house. Right. More principal.
Right. Well, but that's, again, the economic climate we're in. And right now that's your hedge, but you have the cash reserves to be able to. Exactly. So you're just gamifying the situation at this point. But I like this even back in the day. And so, Greg, I've always had we always ascribe to the Pearson's law, even when we're talking about practices. What you track gets better, what you track increases. And I did that on my own personal side. I actually had a net worth tracker on my personal side since I was 25, right? Here's my assets, here's my liabilities, blah, 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 blah. And so in that, I also had this cash flow index. So I would take all my debt and calculate it based on, and it would give me that. And so it would identify my dangerous, quote unquote, in the cash flow index loans. And it did help me identify a target, because I would say, ooh, that one sucks. Let's figure out a way to get rid of that. And ironically, my most inefficient loan at the time was my student loans.
Yeah.
So that was a focus, and that felt good to go after and attack and get rid of those things, because they just feel, I don't know, they just beat you up for some reason.
By the way, you just got to get resourceful. We had a guy in our mastermind that had a rate of blank percentage. I can't remember what it is. I'm like, dude, that sucks. Like, go shop that. Well, I did. I went to 2 other banks. I'm like, well, keep shopping it. And ultimately he found a patient who's on the board of a local bank and wound up saving him a lot of money. And just for signing you and I, for signing paperwork, have created massive cash flow in our past.
Well, look, here's another interesting method to do with student loans. And I started to do this as well and go down this. If you have equity in your home, which probably if you own a home right now, you have, because the house values have gone crazy. So you've probably got equity, even no matter when you bought it, you probably got equity. So and student loans are not tax deductible up to a certain point if you start making more than that. But house loans up to $1 million in aggregate are. So if you have equity
and up to $1 million,
up to $1 million, yeah. Right. And so you could get a cash out. You could take a second mortgage on your home in moderation, hopefully, and pay down your student loans, which you're just converting that debt. And then by doing that, you probably lower the interest rate to in the 3s, because I know a lot of people are in the 6s and 7s right now. I talk to. You lower your interest rate automatically, and then you're also converting it into a more efficient debt based on the cash flow index, what we're talking about. So that is a method that I think is a cool thing to modify and pay it off with equity from your home, as opposed to just unsecured debt from student loans. Also, having unsecured debt is another thing to have. If you have it on your own personal balance sheet, I think when you go to apply for loans, banks get nervous when they see unsecured debt. There's no way they can reassess. There's no way they can reclaim your brain they can reclaim your house and they feel better about that collateral. They don't feel good about the collateral of your brain. So unsecured debt, which student loans, I think they look at like, okay, we understand you have it because you're a doctor, but we really don't love it. And so you get penalized, I think, in the approval process, right? Wouldn't you agree?
No, 100%. 100%. Okay. As you were talking, by the way, I was thinking that, are you going to hit inflation somewhere through this? I haven't seen this presentation.
I'm really not.
But I just want to say one small pin about inflation. Peter, you and I talk about this a lot offline. So inflation penalizes the poor and helps the rich because inflation pays off your debt for you. Mm-hmm. So when your mortgage payment, that's, $1,000 or $2,000.
Well, it doesn't penalize the poor. It penalizes the people that don't have assets or equity.
And the poor don't have assets, unfortunately.
All right.
So rich people own assets. That's what rich people do. That's what they do. Those are the rules of the rich. They own assets. And when you and I are filling up our tanks with $10 gas or buying $9 or $12 Starbucks coffees in a couple of years from now, your student loan payment, your fixed payment on your house, as long as it's not an adjustable rate, or any of the other fixed payments of repayments are all being paid down by inflation, meaning it's the same dollars. The same dollars of your debt payment are not being inflation adjusted. So the time value of money, it was a big deal. $100, 100 years ago could buy you a car.
Right.
So in 20 years, 100 years ago,
a car.
Yeah.
They cannot buy you a car, but all right. So I don't know about a car, Craig. I think a Model T when they first came out, by the way, was like 150. Oh yeah. Well, $1. Literally, you just thought you could buy a car for $1 in 1900.
No, $100. I said.
Oh, I thought you said $1.
No, I said $100.
Well, that's even that. Well, $1 and 100 are still.
Well, the point is, it wasn't as sensational as you said, and inflation will happen, whether you believe it or not. It's going to happen. And,
of course, it is. You can't print 2 trillion with 4 trillion more on the docket and think that like nothing's going to happen to the ice cube that you're holding. That's a whole different conversation, and that's what we're going to talk to Peter Maluk about. Like, what is the hedge? What is the hedge? All right, but coming back to the cash flow just for a second, Craig, and then we'll wrap. Is that I did find an area where I found that the cash flow in my life, the cash flow index was breaking down. And that was with credit card or consumer debt, because you can make a minimum payment, right? So remember how you calculate.
Were you doing that, by the way? Were you making?
Well, sometimes I did have some credit card debt. I mean,
I never did that. That's like, that's
well, you were born with a little bit more of a silver spoon than this guy.
Yeah. Well, listen,
I had to pay for my dental school. You got it paid for.
Well, I mean, listen, I had to pay for a little bit of it, but yes, I if we're talking about who's blessed, I am blessed. I'm not gonna lie.
Great. All you gotta do is just put on some sunglasses and block all the haters, buddy. Just put them on.
Exactly. Well, speaking of blockers, are those blue blockers? Who makes those fucking glasses?
These are great. What are you talking about, dude? These are bad.
They look like the 3D glasses you get in a movie theater for free at like Epcot. Did we just walk out of Michael Jackson's Neo exhibit at the Epcot? God.
These are stylish, dude.
All right, keep going. This is important. So yeah, credit card debt, big no-no.
So yeah. So anyway, so this is where the formulaically it breaks down, because if you cash flow index, you remember you get it by taking the balance you owe divided by your minimum payment. And in your minimum payment in a credit card, they pretty much will let you pay 50 cents. Right, because they love you having a balance, because it's at like
credit too, by the way.
19%. Yeah, care credit. It's at like 9. So because cash flow index ignores formulaically the interest rate, and you could sometimes have 19%. See how it's highlighted here, 19%. It has a very good number, meaning it has a 200 as the efficiency. And eventually this breaks down, as I kind of did the math more and more. Eventually breaks down because that debt is compounding by 19%. So it takes, quote unquote, this efficient loan and eventually converts it into something that is very problematic, as we all know. Like, if you have credit card, I think I should have made the disclaimer. If you have credit card debt, that's obviously the first one to get rid of.
Yeah, you got to get rid of that one.
And then the last method is just something called debt flood. And this is where you come into some money, you've had a great month, and you just dump it onto something that you just hate. And whether it's psychologically your student loans.
By the way, that's an important thing to talk about. There was a podcast or something that you and I talked about one time where it was like the plate theory, like people eat what's on their plate.
Yeah.
Podcast we did. So like back in the day, like George Washington and that era, the Revolutionary War, plates were very small. Like, so the average dinner plate was the size of like a saucer, as it would be today. And people were not as fat as they were today. And there's a theory that the larger your plate, the more you'll eat. And it's proven. So if you give someone a larger plate at a buffet, they'll fill it all the way up to the top and they'll eat the whole damn thing. If you give someone a smaller plate, they'll do the same. Same thing with your finances. So if you've been having rocking months and you're looking at hundreds or millions of dollars in your bank account, hundreds of thousands or thousands or a lot more money than you've ever had, you're going to tend to make more poor decisions because you have a larger plate. So putting that money towards debt repayment.
Wait, times for a second. So you're saying when you're all of a sudden have a healthy full plate balance in your bank account, you make poorer decisions?
If you have a lot of cash, you'll tend to make more poor decisions. One of the reasons why I think real estate is so great, and you and I have talked about this, because if you buy a piece of income producing real estate, we all know we should save more. We all know we should, at the end of the year, we talk to our financial planners and whoever, and like, you should put more money away. I will do that next year. I'll put more money next year. But like real estate, if you're 5 days late on putting that payment in, you'll get a penalty.
And it's forced savings, you're saying?
Yeah, it's forced savings.
Look, I've got something great coming up for the summit with this. And it's something I posted on the Mighty Network and going into the whole real estate and why real estate is such a great, why you and I have always loved real estate. And it talks about, how kind of it minimizes your tax, why it increases your income, the forced savings, it's a hedge, all the things. And I talk about this bonus depreciation,
depreciation,
cost segregation, and the whole thing. And it's levered, right? You're using the bank's money to get all the benefit.
Yeah. It's like the reason why Trump is so hated for his tax returns is because he's a real estate guy. One of my best friends, Michael,
he paid no taxes. He paid no taxes forever.
My buddy Michael pays like nothing in taxes, and he's not doing anything illegal. He's just using the tax code.
Yep.
Which probably might change, but
why?
Yeah.
Well, because change that.
There's 1030. There's a lot of talk in the Biden administration about doing away with 1031 exchanges, and there's a lot of talk. So
they're also talking about taxing unrealized gains, which will not happen. But anyway, they cannot. It's a fabric of America. Okay. That being said, buddy, that was it. I'm glad this has been on my list of wanting to do for a long time.
I'm glad I did it with you. I'm glad
I did. It was hard. I tried to actually record it by myself in like studio and like a video, and it didn't feel good. And this felt way better. Things always feel better with you, buddy.
Oh, that's so sweet. That's so nice.
That's all you get. That's the only nicety you get until I'm building you all the niceties up. So I can't wait when I'm on stage with you and I can just get to crush your balls.
Hey, speaking of which, on stage, by the way, we still have, I think, like 15 tickets left. Look at that.
I think that's fake news.
Really? You think we're sold out?
I don't know. I have to ask.
I think we still have some tickets. So if you're deliberating, do it. Maybe you were one of those people that are trapped in one of those states that like you're afraid to like leave your house and stuff like that, or that you're being told you can't leave your house. And now those state legislations are lifting. So if you think that in the next month it's going to get better, God willing, with your COVID restrictions, it might be time to pull trigger and be around some other people. And
or if you don't want to come, bring your team. Like especially if you can get your office manager. Let's say you're all good for the summer and you don't want to go, but like if you can send your office manager to get some time around Erica, Craig's, who's leading our Bulletproof team now, I'm telling you, it will be a wise investment for you.
Yeah. And by the way, I'd premise that 10 times guarantee would still be the same, because even if you took your office manager and you didn't go, we would guarantee that you'd increase your production by 10 times over the next year of what you spend on her or him. That's for sure.
Yep. Okay, buddy. I'm going to get let you eat some lunch, and I'll see you in a little bit, and we'll do the Peter Maluk. I'm excited. So make sure that if you're listening to this pod, that you set your reminder for the next time or your alerts for the next time it comes out, because the next one following this will be Peter. And it'll be something we should all be paying attention to, because when Peter talks, people like Tony Robbins listen. So we should be listening. Exactly. We should be listening. 100%. And then last thing, I think, don't forget, if you're a longtime listener and you haven't reviewed us, we'd appreciate it. Sometimes those go stagnant if we're not asking for it. And leave us some love and let us know what you like and don't like. But always leave 5 stars. Just kidding. Just kidding. Just don't be like that guy that crushed me that one time. It hurt my heart. I'm not kidding you. What's this 10-minute shit? Leave that for Instagram.
Peter, you suck. I liked it because it was really more directed towards you. So
100% it was. It was my idea, and he just like he crushed me. And And
Cool, guys.
yeah, and if you haven't joined the Bulletproof network, go to bulletproof.dental. That's pretty cool. That's very active. I get in there and bang some stuff out the other day, and it's nice to just see dentists helping dentists.
Yeah. And by the way, that's a perfect venue if you want to pick anybody's brain, because you can crowdsource it. And believe me, whatever challenge you have that you want input on, there's hundreds of other colleagues of ours that have the same challenge. So let's create that conversation there, because we want to help as many people as possible. And texting and emailing a one-off question is not the best venue to do that. So join that today.
Yeah. Okay, buddy. Good one.
Okay,
Over and out.
See you. Talk to you soon. Thanks.